And a happy Tuesday to you all watching from wherever you are. Welcome to episode 7 of the SHL Network podcast, where we talk all things high school hockey, most importantly, the Scholastic Hockey League that has really started to get into full swing. We're going to be talking nonstop about the SHL and the other leagues today. And Dylan, how are we doing?
Feeling good. Another fun week of the SHL hockey. I was, doing some work for the CCM World Invite over the weekend, six game broadcasts in a span of 3 days. So, definitely feeling a little tired from that, but it's good to sit down here and get ready to talk about the SHL.
Oh yeah, I think it's 3 weeks out. I do a ACHA showcase. It's two showcases in Romeoville. I do 10 games in 3 days.
Gee.
NHL length because ACHA is NHL length. I don't know. We talked about medicine ball tea, what, last episode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be used every single day.
Yeah, I had a few of those this weekend too. If I'm feeling this way after just broadcasting the game, I can only imagine what it feels like to go out and play, six games over 3 days or something of the sort. But I don't know how those players do it, but it's part of the game, part of what you sign up for.
Yeah, I'm washed up now. I can't tell you how anymore either, but so today we'll talk about the week recap, of course. Then we'll have Deacon Rose, Carmel skater, who's been killing it so far this season. He'll join us as the Carmel Catholic representative on the podcast. After that, we'll look outside the SHL. We'll preview this week. It's a lot of hockey this week. Let's see, we got 15 games, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah, and 5 games on Sunday. So of course, with 11 teams in the league, that's the maximum you can have on one day. So
Wow.
that's gonna be
Yeah, no,
fun. We'll
it's
have to we'll have
insane.
to look at that schedule, see who that one team that's gonna be missing out on the action is. But yeah, that's gonna be a hectic day. Not to mention some staggered start times. I know you got a 3 o'clock in there, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So yeah, that'll be fun.
So rewinding back to last week, we go to Tuesday, first game of the week, where Glenbrook South traveled into Carmel, took that road victory 6-4 over the Corsairs. Glenbrook South given 8 power play chances. They score on 2 of them. And that is the second game of the season in general to reach 10 goals this year, with, of course, 10 total. That is just behind the 11 total when New Trier played Carmel and beat them 9-2. So Carmel's been in some high scoring affairs already this season.
Yeah, and it's one thing we talked about last episode that it was going to be a busy week for Carmel, and that it was. This was their first game. They play at home. They actually carried the lead into the second period over the Titans 2-1, but Glenbrook South tied it in the second period with one goal. It entered the third period 2-2, and when the third period started is when the pucks really started hitting the back of the net. The Titans with three unanswered quick ones. Then Carmel with 3:03 left were trailing by a score of 5-2. Lincoln Stokel and Ryan Capulong with 2 goals in less than a minute to get the Corsairs back within one. And then Blake Hoffer for the Titans adds the empty netter. So Glenbrook South makes it 2 wins in a row, where they because they beat the Lake Forest Scouts and then the Carmel Catholic Corsairs there.
And oh my goodness, how about this? They turn around into Wednesday. They're hosting Loyola. And you're coming off a back to back off of playing one great team. You're hosting another great team. And if I'm seeing this score correctly, Dylan, if there's no game sheet error, the Corsairs beat the Ramblers 6-1. Unbelievable stuff. Deacon Rose, who we'll talk to, had 3 points. Max Vavra, 3 points, 2 power play goals for Carmel, who started off the game with a 5-0 lead before eventually Loyola could finally grab one. How do you even unfold this debacle, Dylan?
Yeah, this was a shocker. I think this is probably for me the biggest surprise outcome of the season so far, more so than York beating New Trier, more
Absolutely.
so than any other game. Carmel gets the running clock on Loyola Gold, and it was also Loyola Gold's first regulation loss. Can you believe that? They were 6-0-3 coming into this game. It was a relatively close game in terms of shots, 32-29 in favor of Carmel. But like you said, Luke, 5 unanswered goals to begin the game, and then each team with one back to back in the third. And yeah, that's you talk about something that's going to get your team going. It's that, and Carmel took advantage of this opportunity, like you said, coming off the back to back on home ice, and they just showed up against this Loyola Gold team, and you know we've had quite a few coaches, representatives, guests on the podcast. And I think that 75% of them have said the exact quote in the SHL, any team can be any team on any night. And there's your perfect example.
You even
Carmel.
heard it from the most dominant coach of them all, even Adam Cherish, who we heard that from first, of New
Yep.
Trier, who typically wins every game. He knows no matter what team, no matter what barn you're walking into, it does not matter your past. It matters what is put on the ice. And a great example of it there. That is not the only team to be running clocked. As we talk about Loyola getting running clocked on Wednesday, Fenwick also running clocked on Wednesday as well. Glenbrook North red hot starting off their red hot week. Five unique goal scores and a 5-0 shutout combined from Adam Silver stopping 6 out of 6, and then Michael Raderman stopping 9 out of 9, Dylan.
Yeah, you talk about the season series between the Spartans and Friars last season. GBN took it 2 out of 3 games. If you remember, Fenwick only with 2 wins last season. Well, one of them was against GBN, and on another occasion, Glenbrook North beat them in a shootout. So something about that matchup, it seemed like Fenwick played really well against GBN, but this year Glenbrook North is on an absolute another level. This would be their sixth consecutive win, but more on that as we get later into the week.
And we talk more about the Spartans as they were our first game on Friday. They hosted the St. Viator Lions at the Northbrook Sports Center. This was the second of 3 home games this week for Glenbrook North, and they take care of business in what I claim to be my personal game of the week last week.
Right?
Glenbrook North takes it by 3. Michael Raderman stops 29 out of 30, boasting his goals allowed average to .73 and his save percentage to .967 through this season so far. And then Thomas Hendrickson with 2 goals as well. All around, these Spartans are just on fire, Dylan.
Luke, and I've been working in this league for a while. I remember the days when Michael Raderman was a sophomore and how we were talking about he's the future of GBN. Well, that future is now. He has been absolutely outstanding this season. It doesn't matter what opponent he's facing. He is always ready to play. He's always so locked in every game. And if you go out and watch him play in person, the stats don't lie. He is just so focused that his puck knowledge, or I should say puck movement behind the net. He sort of kind of acts like a sixth skater for head coach Evan Polakidis, making passes. And yeah, he's really fun to watch and a very impressive goalie in this year now in this senior year.
Then we would go to Ruby Ice Arena, where it was the SHL game of the week. Fenwick hosting Carmel. The Corsairs win this one 4-2, thanks primarily to Max Vavra, who had 2 goals to open the game. Fenwick came back from being down 2-0, but they couldn't hang on as the Corsairs eventually boosted ahead. Dylan, you were at this game, correct? And you
Yeah, I
saw,
was hanging out.
yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
It was an exciting game, fast paced. These two teams match up really well against each other. And like you said, Robert Schmidt of the Fenwick Friars in the third period with 4:59 to go ties the game up. But then just after that, Carmel gets a power play in. Who else but Deacon Rose gets the go-ahead goal, which stood to be the winner. Ryan Capulong as the empty netter. And I'm just gonna say this, okay? I have been to quite a few games that don't have any students at them. Okay, and it's just the parents. And I'm not gonna cut anyone short. There were a couple Fenwick students at the game, but no crazy crowd to write home about. That might be one of the most electric atmospheres of pure parent energy I have ever seen in a game. Those two groups of fans were yelling back and forth the whole time, cheering at almost every moment of the game. I mean, hits that go unnoticed in the grand scheme of things. You heard a roar from the crowd. And if any people who were at that game are watching this podcast, I just want to tip my hat to you because that you made it a very fun atmosphere at Paul Ruby that night.
Yeah, I mean, and Ruby in general is just a kind of loud place. I remember my junior year, we opened up our season at OPRF. They had a decent amount of students in there. And I mean, obviously it was very loud. I know what you're talking about though. Like you could almost hear the parents louder than you could hear the students. I mean, when it comes to OPRF for Fenwick, two rivals, I mean, both of those teams have some pretty enthusiastic parents, and you got to love that. Absolutely. Because, that, and that's crazy you bring that up because I was looking at the Instagram story. I was like, wow, I mean, I almost would have expected more people to be there, but they made up for it with the sound. And that's, you just love hearing sound as a player, at least from my perspective. I live for a crowd. I'm sure all these guys do too. That's why I miss it so much. But that would do it for Friday. Then we would go to Saturday, the Fenwick Friars on a back to back at Lake Forest instead of home this time. And Fenwick took care of business, one goal in every period, beating Lake Forest 3-0. Cole Alessi, a 20 save shutout, and Fenwick moves to 4-9.
Yeah, and this is a much needed game for Fenwick. They had a 6 game losing streak coming in after early on in this podcast, Luke, we were talking about how Fenwick had a hot start. It sort of started to fizzle away as the season started to take shape, but they come in on the road and get this win over Lake Forest. Like you said, Cole Lessie with the shutout there, and Fenwick, or I should say, Lake Forest is kind of an interesting team so far early in the season for me. It seems like they have really hot nights and really cold nights. Now they're sitting with 5 wins in 13 games, but they'll have a handful of games this week ahead, and we'll see if they can start to get back on track.
Absolutely. And we had another 3-0 shutout on Saturday right after that one. And who else but Michael Raderman taking care of business. But this was not to no bottom feeder team. This was St. Ignatius that could not find a goal. And as somebody who's already seen St. Ignatius's offense in person, they are freaky fast. They are I mean, obviously a fast-paced offense, but I am shocked they could not put one by even Michael Raderman. And that is now 8 straight SHL wins for GBN. Now 8-1-0. They lost to St. Ignatius in their first game in mid-September. They have not lost since in league play.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how long they're gonna keep this streak going. Like you said, this tied up the season series between these two, and it kind of comes full circle. They lose 1-0, and then they go, what was it, 3 weeks without a full 3 period game in the book. And then, that's when they really started to get hot. And not to mention 8 straight wins, Luke, but Glenbrook North plays a lot of non-conference games throughout their schedule. It's just something that head coach Evan Polakidis always likes to get on the schedule. In or out of the SHL, their winning streak is now at 13 consecutive games. And not to mention, head coach of the Spartans, Evan Polakidis, currently at the time of recording this podcast, sits 4 wins away from 700 career wins behind the
Wow.
bench with the GBN Spartans.
That is an incredible nugget, Dylan. I mean, I had no idea, and that's incredible stuff. Not shocking he's up there in those numbers, though. I mean, he is a high school legend, and wow, nearing 700 wins. That is no joke. And with the way GBN's playing, they could very much easily get that in their next 4 games. Speaking of the number 4, the Trevians on Sunday now
Mhm.
hosted the St. Viator Lions. They blanked the Lions. There were 4 shutouts this week. They win
Yeah.
this one 4-0 over the Lions. Wyatt Schmidt getting the shutout, 21 saves, and the best power play in the SHL continues to shine, grabbing 1 on 3 opportunities in this one.
Yeah, another case of the 4 unique scores. This was a relatively close game until it wasn't. New Trier had a 1-0 lead with 11:55 to go in the first period, and or pardon me, in the second period, and then they didn't score the 2-0 goal until 4:51 left. Then Luke Chu scored a minute after that, and then in the third period they get that power play goal. And I've got an interesting little nugget about this game too, Luke. Thanks to Sam Schwartz for filling in with this info.
Of
But
course, it's Sam.
yeah, the North Shore, Ice Arena, I guess, is having some problems with their clock lately, and sometimes it just shuts off and stops working completely for no reason, and nobody at the rink can fix it. And then, an hour or two later, it'll just be back on. So the first 12 minutes of this third period was played with an iPhone clock. So whoever was in the penalty box just had their phone. The players couldn't actually see how much time there was in the game because the scoreboard wasn't on. And it was just a parent hitting start and stop the same way they would if it was on the arena clock, just on their timer app. And then eventually I guess the clock worked for the end of the game, so they just put up however much time was remaining. But as a player, you like to think that you're not paying attention to the time. You're just playing as hard as you can until the buzzer sounds. But, how weird would it be to kind of be playing in the third period of a pretty big game between two competitive teams and, not really, I mean, have some idea, but not an exact idea of where you're at in the third period.
It's really bizarre, Dylan, and honestly, I have not experienced that, but I'm almost surprised I haven't because there are a couple of those rinks that have those wonky score boxes. Typically, it's almost every parent just having an issue with putting in a penalty. It's never been the actual clock itself, but yeah, no, this is new to me. And honestly, from St. Viator's perspective, or actually more from a Nutrier's perspective, you don't even want to see that clock. You don't even want to worry about time. You just want to keep playing. You don't want to think that you can let off the gas when you're up by that many goals, even if you're the best team in the state. But I think, especially for special teams, whether you're on the PK or power play, that's really important. And honestly, sometimes in the later moments of games, I'm looking at the clock to see how long I'm out there, see if I should get a change or I should keep going. Now, that's rare, of course, because typically you evaluate it on how you feel with your body. But if you're out there for 2 minutes and you still have some in you, but junior year when you're not up on the top line, it's typically a sign to just get off and get onto the bench. But yeah, no, I've never experienced that, and that's a crazy thing that we found from Sam Shorts, and that's bizarre. I just can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah, over the summer, just as a little side gig, I would do the scoreboard for some beer league games, and a lot of them were at North Shore Ice Arena. So I myself ran into that problem once or twice. But yeah, they got to get that figured out, especially if we've got, SHL hockey taking place inside that barn. You got to make sure that thing's working.
One last game to recap. It was a Sunday night in Chicago, St. Ignatius hosting Carmel, who had to make the lengthy trip there. And the Wolfpack take this one 4-3. It started with Carmel up 2-0. Then it was tied. Then Carmel led 3-2, and then they lost 4-3. What an absolute tennis match of a hockey game, Dylan.
Yeah, and you look here in the third period, like you said, Luke, Carmel with a 3-2 lead going into the third period. And then in the third period, with 9:50 to go, Jason Rizzuti takes a 2-minute interference penalty. Little did St. Ignatius know that this would be their key to victory. How about Michael Holub and Jackson Steinlauf scoring two shorthanded goals 40 seconds apart on the same kill to tie the game and then take the lead for Ignatius? They held on by that score, and Ignatius goes back above a 500 win percentage with their seventh win of the year.
So now we get a chance to talk to Deacon Rose, star player of the Corsairs, who was a part of this important week, getting a huge win against Fenwick, and even more important one about Loyola on Wednesday. We'll get to hear all the details from the man himself, joining the podcast now. And there he is, special guest for week 7 of the SHL Network podcast. This is Deacon Rose. How are you doing today, Deacon?
I'm great. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm very excited for this opportunity.
For those of you that don't know, Deacon Rose is an absolute stud for the Corsairs, at least so far this season. 11 points in 9 games. And not only that, but the Corsairs coming off of a hot week in general, taking down the Loyola Gold Ramblers. And Deacon, just take me through what has clicked so far on what was an incredible week for the Corsairs.
I don't think it was the week in particular. I think we have been clicking. I think stuff has been killing us, like penalties early in the season. That was a big factor of why we weren't winning games really. We're a really good 5-on-5 team, but when we're taking like 9 penalties a game, it's hard to be on the kill for that long. So I just feel when we're 5-on-5, we can compete with anybody in the state.
Well, speaking specifically about that Loyola game, 6-1, you got the running clock on the Ramblers. It was Loyola's first regulation loss of the year in their 10th game. I mean, going into that game, what was the mindset of you and the team in general, and how were you able to get that done?
Well, honestly, the mindset of everybody on my team, we were all looking for respect from everybody in the league. We don't want to be the team that everyone's playing their backup goalie against, or the team that everyone looks down on. Oh, we're gonna have an easy night tonight. We want to be a team like, oh, we got to bring our A game, or they could really cause some damage. So we kind of just want to turn that around for us.
So you've been on varsity since you were a freshman. What did you learn that year that helped you develop so well and become the player you are today?
Yeah, I actually learned a lot my freshman year. I actually started as a defenseman,
Wow.
funny enough. When I went into Carmel, I was a defenseman, and halfway through the season, my coach PJ Everhart switched me to forward, and we've never really looked back. And I really enjoyed learning from those seniors from that year, from like Nolan Harubin and Bryce Stenstrud, and like those big guys. And I just want to follow in their footsteps and make an impact.
Yeah, you talk about those names, that gives me some flashbacks because, like you being an SHL player now in your fourth year, this is my fourth year working for the league. And, your name is one that I've been calling all throughout those 4 years. And you talk about your head coach, PJ Eberhart. I talked to a lot of coaches before the games of, all the teams, and, all of them are great, but PJ is just such a stand-up guy, and he's always ready to give me the information I need and very supportive of the broadcast. How has he been during your 4 year run with the Corsairs?
He's been a really, really nice mentor to have. He's given lots of insight, and he kind of just lets us be us. Like he doesn't want to change our game in any way. He wants us to be the best players we can be, and he kind of just it kind of just works hand in hand because we get to play with the guys we want to play with, and ultimately just be the team that we hope to be.
I like to ask this question with every single player we've had on this podcast. And of course, your career is far from over. But up to this point, what is your favorite memory, whether it's just individual or team, so far in your SHL career?
I think sophomore year I think it was the first ever Carmel 500 season ever in the SHL history, and I was able to score the OT game winner against Loyola on their senior night, and that was something else. Just the excitement that came from that game, it was awesome.
As soon as you said OT winner, I had a feeling you were gonna go to your OT winner against the Providence Catholic Celtics in the round of 16 of the state playoffs. I think that was the same season.
Yeah,
What was that like to do that on that big of a stage?
that was really something special. Going into the game, I never would have expected that we would have went into overtime and I would have been the one to score the OT winner. But I wouldn't have been able to score if it wasn't for my line mates that year, Leon Swikowski and Ryan Caplong.
That was 0-0 going into overtime, right?
It was 0-0.
Yeah. Those games are always so tense.
I know.
Dylan, you had a good question about the rivalry series.
Yes, Carmel Catholic has been selected to participate in the rivalry series, obviously, this year. You guys will be playing the Lake Forest Scouts. I think this is now the fourth year of the rivalry series, first time Carmel's been in the mix. So, talk about the excitement of, finding that out, and also the rivalry with the Lake Forest Scouts in general.
Yeah, so all the boys on the team are super excited for the opportunity to play in the Blackhawks rivalry series. And Lake Forest has it's weird because we go year to year with them. Like some years we'll beat them a lot, other years we'll go like 2-1 for us or for them. And this year, I think it's one of those most important years because last year we didn't make those playoffs. And I think Lake Forest is one of those teams that we need to get those must win games if we want to make these playoffs this year.
That's a great point you make. And Dylan, also about the CCHL.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was your freshman and sophomore year or just freshman, but there was a time where Carmel played in the SHL and CCHL simultaneously, similar to, what's going on with St. Ignatius and Fenwick these days. What was that like trying to balance those two regular seasons going on at the same time? It's a lot of games. And, do you think that Carmel dropping out of the CCHL and putting their sole focus on the SHL is, help the team in terms of rest, in terms of, focus, attention, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we participated in the CCHL my freshman year alone, and it was nice to play a lot of games because, of course, as a freshman, all you want to do is play games and all that stuff. You have all this energy to keep going, going, going. But looking back now, I think that it's good that we're only sticking to the SHL because, as we can all probably agree, the SHL is the best competition in all of Illinois high school hockey. So I think just not having an overwhelming amount of games and being able to get that like practice time in and to perfect certain things and aspects of the game is just huge for like the team's performance and everything.
We talked about this last week on the podcast. It was our question of the week. So we were wondering, we'd ask the source themselves, the players, what is your favorite pregame meal?
My favorite pregame meal, probably pasta. I'm
There
a
we
big
go. There we go, Dylan. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you called it.
It's the carbs, the carbs give you energy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's such a go-to answer, and rightfully so. I mean, I never played hockey, but I know how the body works and how, getting carbs into your system can give you that boost.
Any more questions, Dylan? Or, I mean, I think we might have hit them all.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of one more question, based on the Loyola game. Actually, I'll have two more questions. I'll start with the Loyola game, obviously 6-1. You play them again this week at their place, American Heartland Ice Arena, and as you mentioned, you have a fond memory of scoring an overtime winner there. Uh, when you play a team twice in such a short amount of time, it gives the other team, a chance to have that game fresh in their mind, and you got to figure Loyola's going to be coming back hard in that game. What are you going to do? Obviously this podcast is public, so without revealing too many secrets, what goes into preparing to face off against that team again?
Well, we do have practice tomorrow, so I'm sure Coach PJ Everhart's going to have some dialed up for us to mentally and physically prepare us for the game. And I think we just got to give it our all again, and hopefully we get the right outcome that we were looking for.
And then the last one I had for you, you guys just played on Friday night against the Fenwick Friars on the road, a 4-2 win. That was the SHL game of the week. And I said this earlier in the episode to Luke. There were not too many students there. Fenwick had a couple, it was a road game for you guys, but maybe the most electric parent atmosphere I have ever witnessed at an SHL game. The Fenwick fans and the Carmel fans are going back and forth, oohs and ahs at just about every play. You guys have a great fan base, obviously, when your students show up, but to know that pretty much every game you play, those parents are going to be into it the whole time. How does that help you night in and night out?
It's great. It's great having that support system. Every time you make a big play, a nice pass, a nice shot, everyone's like, great job, great job. It's just a lot of support, and it's really nice for everybody to have, honestly. Everyone's always lifting each other up, and it's just builds the team up. It's really nice.
Last question on my part. Just want to make sure we have a normal skater in this room. Favorite NHL team?
Oh, I like the Edmonton Oilers, but I'm a Blackhawks fan.
Okay, okay, okay. Thanks for making my heart sink, Deacon. Really appreciate it. Well, good
Is
to
that
know that you're
is that you like the Oilers or you like Connor McDavid?
I like the Oilers. I was rooting for them. I lost a lot of money in the to friends and family
Yeah.
in the Edmonton versus Florida games last year. So that was
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker. I mean,
yeah,
I felt for the Oilers fans so much, and I going into that series, I really didn't care who won. I thought it would be cool to see Florida win their first Stanley
yeah.
Cup, but also to see Connor McDavid. But the way that that went, going up 3-0, then all the way to game seven, that really must have hurt.
Yeah, we take it for
Wasn't fun for
granted.
my bank account.
All right, Deacon. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You had a chaotic week last week. You got another one coming this week. Good luck with all and into the rest of the season as well. We will see you a couple more times on YouTube Live when the Corsairs are live. So, Deacon, really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your night, all right?
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been a
All right.
pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again, man.
And with that, thank you so much, Deacon Rose, for joining us. It is a pleasure to always have a player onto the podcast. Obviously, you can only hear so much about the players from the coaches. It's really cool to hear from the source themselves, Dylan.
Yeah, we got to get some more players here on the podcast. We've done a pretty good job. Week one, we said we're going to try to have a guest every single episode, and we have not failed that goal yet. So, with lots of episodes to go, we'll try to get some players on here more often.
Players all across the state of Illinois. Let's take a look at three other leagues with our outside the SHL look. First off, with the IHSHL North Central, it is an important week there. BJHW is currently at the top, but the spotlight is on Highland Park and Deerfield. They play Friday, 8:40 p.m. at the Glacier Ice Arena South Rink. It's free to go there. The Blackhawks host it. There's a ton of cool events. You can shoot the puck at intermission. It's going to be a rowdy crowd from somebody who played in the North Central Division themselves. Those two teams, hate's a strong word, but they might just hate each other, and it should be a real fun one. If you can't make it there, join Max, Anthony, and Wes on the SHL broadcast on SHL Network.
And
For
Luke, if I'm
this,
not mistaken, when we said what games should be on the rivalry series this year, was that one of your picks or what?
that was my pick, and
Nice.
I had a feeling. I had a feeling this was the year after all the tight games they had last year. I'm really excited to see it all unfold. I can't be there, of course, but so be it. We'll figure it out. I'll find a way to watch. So, because you can't miss this one. It is going to be a very fun showcase of some of the top talents of the North Central. You look at guys like Dylan Lansky for Highland Park, Josh Becker from Deerfield. A lot of studs on both sides. Should be a fun one. Should be a physical one. In the CCHL, how about this? Bennett is first in the Chicago Catholic Hockey League with a 7-0 record, and that is coming off of their recent win over St. Ignatius, 5-4, and those two will meet again on Thursday. And the Red Wings have 15 power play goals through 7 games. The next team has 7 power play goals. The Red Wings are catching fire.
Yeah, having a hot power play is one thing, but averaging over one PPG per game, especially through that many
Not
games.
not even just one, Dylan. That's over two. That
Wait,
is
wait. Can you say
probably
the
just
stat
about
again?
15 power play goals through 7 games.
Oh, I thought you said 17. Jeez. That's even more impressive then.
Yeah, no, incredible stuff from Bennett. They still have a ways to go, but they currently are at the top of the podium in the CCHL. Over at the West, this is a league that hasn't had a lot of change in the last few weeks. It's still Plainfield at the top with Glenbard trailing behind, not Glenbrook. Plainfield has a 9-1-0 record, and they are plus 40 through 10 games, winning their games by an average of 4 goals.
That's pretty
So
incredible.
the Predators on the My Hockey Rankings website have peaked inside the top 10 a couple of times now. Them and Bennett are two of the teams, non-SHL teams, that have been able to make that MHR top 10. Now, of course, those are computer automated rankings, but it still proves the point that those teams are going to be state threats for sure.
Yeah, a long way away from that state championship tournament, but it takes into account your entire season, and we're starting to see some of that take form.
So now we will take a look into our week preview. You might want to get your coffee and sit here a while because we are going to be talking about 15 games going on in the Scholastic Hockey League this week. Alrighty, so 15 games. We start on Monday, so unfortunately, we can't really talk about this one in the present because you're seeing this on Tuesday. But I guess we can predict, Dylan, and see if we're right. How about this? York at St. Ignatius tonight, aka yesterday, 7:40 puck drop at Fifth Third Ice Arena. York back after an entire week off. St. Ignatius won the first battle 3-0. Do you got a score prediction in mind, Dylan?
Yeah, I'm actually going to take the York Dukes to win this one. I think that they're due for a win. They've shown that they beat New Trier. So why can't they beat St. Ignatius? Give me the York Dukes. Let's try 2-1. I think it's going to be 2-1.
I like it. I'm going to go 4-2 York. And this is primarily because you're talking about a St. Ignatius squad that played Saturday and Sunday, now having to flip into a back to back to back. You can be a good team, but it is really tough to win, or sorry, it is really tough to play 3 games in 3 days and have the most successful result happen. So we'll see how that goes. Then you watching today, there is no SHL hockey, so a perfect time to lounge back and check out this podcast. But tomorrow we have 3 games, a shocking 3-game Wednesday and the SHL starting off at 6:40 p.m. at the Northbrook Sports Center. It's St. Viator and Glenbrook North once again, Dylan.
Yeah, not only once again, but once again at Northbrook Sports Center, as these two teams played, like we mentioned, I think it was Friday night, where GBN won 4-1. So, we talked to Tim Benz last week about these 2 games that Glenbrook North has. GBN is going to try to make it 9 wins in a row if they can beat the Lions again. And this kind of makes me think of, in the playoffs when you play a best 2 out of 3 series, is you have that game one so recent in your mind to reflect on and make those, maybe whether it be changing some lines, changing a different power play strategy, what have you. So this should be interesting. It is tough to beat a team twice in a row, so we'll see if the Lions can put a halt to that win streak for the Spartans.
And then we skip to 8 p.m. where it is at Alumni Memorial Fieldhouse, home of not only the Lake Forest Foresters NCAA hockey team, but of course the Scouts as well. Glenbrook South won the previous one at home 5-3, and Lake Forest has been on a little bit of an offensive struggle, looking to bounce out of the slump. 7 goals in their last 4 games, not bad, but they definitely could improve.
Yeah, but you could also make the argument that the Scouts are due for a high offensive game, but the Lake Forest Scouts, a relatively newer team in the SHL. This is now their 3rd season. One team that has absolutely had their number are the Glenbrook South Titans. Since joining the SHL, the Titans have now won 7 consecutive games against the Lake Forest Scouts. And if you want to include a matchup they had this year at the preseason invitational, 8 consecutive games. So we'll see if that means that the Lake Forest Scouts are due or if the Titans are going to continue their dominance against the Scouts.
And then we have the best ice slot time in hockey. As somebody who played out of West Meadows Ice Arena, that was high demand for teams. This was a very common one. Wednesday night, 8:50 p.m. Except now we're at the American Heartland Ice Arena, where Loyola hosts Carmel, a game that we saw last week where the Corsairs had a 6-1 upset. Just talked to Deacon Rose about it. And Loyola Gold has still not been beaten in regulation at home. So we'll see how this one unfolds. And we'll see if the Ramblers can prove that last week was a fluke.
Yeah, you talk about those ice slots. I want to tip my hat to the Loyola Gold faithful. I think that as many SHL games as I've been to, I don't think I've ever been to a Loyola home game where there wasn't a big crowd of students, no matter who they were playing. So you know that the boys in gold, well, actually they both wear gold, so I should specify Loyola is going to be fired up to get some revenge on Carmel. They're going to have that game fresh in their minds, similar to what we just said about GBN and St. Viator, and they're not going to want to disappoint their fans on home ice. So again, if Carmel beat them 6-1, who's to say they can't win again? But I think, yeah, it's hard to say what's going to happen. I think Loyola is going to, be playing for some revenge, though, that's for sure.
Over to Thursday, Stevenson hosts Lake Forest 5:55 at Twin Rinks. Lake Forest won the first one 4-3, but that was back on September 25th. And Stevenson, just like York, took their last week off as well, so they'll have some rest coming into this one.
Yeah, and Lake Forest will be coming off that back-to-back, as we mentioned, having just played at 8 p.m. the night before on a school night, have school the next day, and then get ready for a 5:55 game. Yeah, I'd be interested to see how the rest affects Stevenson, and whether it's rest or rust, so to speak. But these two teams, in terms of standing and ranking, on the same-ish level. So this could be a early big game when it comes down to the playoff stretch. You look at the standings right now. Fenwick holds the last playoff spot at number eight with 8 points. Then it is a dead tie for the three teams out of the playoffs, 7 points apiece, and two of those teams, or one of those teams, is Stevenson. So they're going to try to hop over that. Lake Forest has a lot of points, but partially because they've played a lot of games. So they're right down there when it comes to points percentage. We'll see what happens, but this could be a huge game down the stretch that, in come January, these teams might be thinking, man, if only we had that one.
Absolutely. Two Friday night games. And of course, one of them being the classic Friday nights in Addison at Addison Ice Arena. 7:20 puck drop as the Dukes host the Loyola Ramblers. Loyola already seeking a sweep of the Dukes, winning the first one 1-0. The second game 4-2, already meeting for the third time in the SHL regular season so far. York is 1-5-2 when they play teams above 500, but that one win was against the best team in the state, so we just don't know what to expect going into this one.
Yeah, Luke, 4-2 in the last meeting, and even though it's only early November, it is already the conclusion of the season series with Loyola also taking the first meeting of the season by a final score of 1-0. So, like I said, one of the old adages in hockey, it's hard to beat a team three times in one season, but in the SHL, that seems to happen when the good teams are matched up against kind of the more bottom teams, but you know, I'm still not convinced that York is not a playoff team. We've seen in the last two seasons, they know how to get hot at the right time. They have a lot of guys returning from last year. I think that they have a good chance to win this game and take one from the season series with Loyola. Of course, last season it was the big upset. York beat Loyola in the Elite Eight of the state tournament. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if Loyola takes the sweep or if York can get one back.
Another 7:20 game, this time Carmel trying to steal the shine of a Friday night in Addison, instead a Friday night at Glacier Ice Arena as they host the Stevenson Patriots. So this is interesting because this game is at Glacier at 7:20 on the North Rink, I believe. And then at 8:40 on the South Rink, it's the rivalry series game between Deerfield and Highland Park. So if you want two good hockey games, I recommend being down in Vernon Hills on Friday night. Carmel won the first one against Stevenson in a defensive battle 2-1. That was back on October 17th.
Yeah, and that was Carmel's first win of the season at the time. We just talked about kind of this playoff tight race early down the stretch, and this could be another where it's it could really come down to it once it's all said and done as to which teams make the playoffs. 8 teams make the playoffs out of 11, which is a lot, but there are 3 teams that do not get over that line. So, every game counts in the SHL, and both these teams will be, fighting here early.
Every game counts, absolutely. There's only one type of game that would count more than a simple SHL regular season game, and that's, of course, a Fenwick St. Ignatius double jeopardy. Got me thinking of that, how every game counts. But if you guys don't know about that, you got to tune into episode, what was it, 4, 5?
Yeah, it was
Assuming you're
early on.
assuming you're here for episode 7, you probably already listened to those. You remember the double stakes when it comes to those matchups. Those are of course always fun. Then we head over to a fun day in general. Saturday, the weekend's in full swing, and it starts at 5:20, where the Glenbrook North Spartans host the Lake Forest Scouts. It is the first meeting of the season between the two, and Glenbrook North, of course, on that winning streak. Also, only 2 goals allowed in the last 5 games, Dylan.
Yeah, and with a team like Lake Forest, you look at their average shots on goal, it's not very high. I think it's sitting around 16, 17 per game. So, we'll see if Coach Polakidis goes with Adam Silver or Michael Raderman in this one, but both of those goalies have been sharp to start the year for the Spartans. And if if they can beat St. Viator early in the week, I really can't see Lake Forest being the team that ends this streak. Glenbrook North is just that good right now. And, we will see what happens in this game. I'm really looking forward to the next time they play New Trier because I really believe at this moment those are the number one and number two teams in the state. But if I make the rankings, I wouldn't know who to put at number one right now, to tell you the
Sam's got
truth.
a tough job, that's for sure.
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
keep New Trier by a hair, but I mean, like you said, number one and number two, maybe even 1A and 1B at this point. Then we move on to the last game of, sorry, the second to last game of Saturday, where Stevenson hosts another game at Twin Rinks this week against the New Trier Trevians, a 6:30 puck drop. And New Trier, of course, 10-1, as we've talked about all year. They have just been so dominant. How about that defense between not only goalies Mark Pauly and Wyatt Schmidt, but the rest of the crew in front of them, only allowing, still through 11 games, 1.4 goals allowed on average.
Yeah, that's a pretty good number. And against this Stevenson team, maybe a little bit offensively challenged throughout the season. New Trier on paper should come away with this victory, but it is the first meeting of the season, and we haven't seen these two teams, match up yet, so we don't have anything to compare it to. Actually, that's a lie. They did play each other in the preseason invitational tournament where New Trier won by a final score of I think it was actually not 3-0. That was one of the other games. I think that was the 9-1 game, if I'm
It
not
was
mistaken.
something like that. Yes, it was right near that number. I think you're right, actually.
Yeah, I think New Trier had 3 goals in the first like 2 minutes of the game. So, we'll see what happens with this one. Stevenson is at home. They get that home ice advantage, but we'll see how much of a difference that makes when the final score is revealed.
Then the last game of Saturday, a shockingly early start for the last game of a Saturday, but it's St. Viator at Mount Prospect Ice Arena hosting the York Dukes, at 6:40. But one goal in the last two games for St. Viator. York has lost their last four. One of these teams are going to get the better end and hopefully turn some momentum up headed into the next week.
Yeah, and like you said, York coming into this Monday game here against St. Ignatius had a week off. So, but this is going to be their third game of the week, while it's St. Viator's first game of the week, and also being the first time these two teams are playing each other. Who knows what we're going to see? It's that thing where York, even though they're in last place in the SHL, you just can't count them out as any team that can beat New Trier can beat any other team in the SHL. I mean we will see what happens with this game. St. Viator has put together a nice little stretch here too, so they'll be looking to stay hot as well.
And now we make our way to a jam-packed Sunday. Like Dylan mentioned early on in this episode, the most amount of games you could play in a single day in the SHL. Of course, there's 11 teams, and you can have teams play twice in one day in league play. So here's how it looks. We start at 3:20 p.m., where York travels to play on Carmel. Then it's Stevenson at Loyola at 4:10 at American Heartland. Then it's the SHL game of the week. Join Anthony Pasquale, me, and Max Anderson for that one. 6:40 puck drop. Glenbrook South hosts New Trier. Should be a great one. Two pretty hot teams. Then it's Glenbrook North at Fenwick at 6:45. So the North and South of Glenbrook playing just 5 minutes apart in separate games. And then lastly, a 7 o'clock puck drop between St. Viator hosting Lake Forest. First, obviously, we talk about the game of the week. This should be a good one. New Trier, of course, is probably going to already be coming off of a solid week themselves. And Glenbrook South at home, you just don't know what to expect. These are two teams where Glenbrook South took one of the games out of New Trier. Was it one or two, was it? Because they at least took one out of New Trier last year in the
Last year, Glenbrook South swept New
they
Trier.
swept.
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
they
Well,
did.
talk about a kryptonite for the number one team in the state. This should be a really fun matchup.
Yeah, and you talk about how our audience will be joining you, Anthony, yourself, and Max, but Max actually can't make that game anymore, so I have stepped in to do that sideline. So I'll be looking
How
forward
about
to
that?
being part of that broadcast and working with you, Luke, not on a podcast, but an actual game broadcast. And like we said, GBS swept New True Green last year. They did play already this season in the championship game of the preseason invitational, where the Trevians got the better of the Titans by a final score of 6-1. But you know, when you look at final scores from a tournament, especially in the championship game of a tournament. You're looking at two teams that are playing their fifth or sixth game in a matter of one weekend. So it doesn't always give you the clearer picture of who is going to win, just a regular season game between these two. But GBS originally, this was going to be a back-to-back. They had a non-conference game against Brother Rice the night before. But as a result of Glenbrook South and Brother Rice meeting in the championship, the CCM World Invite, that non-conference game has been canceled. So GBS will be coming off a little bit of rest here on this one. So yeah, we will see these two teams. Whenever they get together, it's always competitive and a big rivalry, not just in the SHL, but any high school sports CSL rivals. We'll see. That game could honestly go either way.
And that game is going to be my personal game of the week. There's a lot of matchups in this one. That one just sticks out the most to me. Dylan, to put you on the spot, your pick for the game of the week. Gonna let you look down the list for a second. Of course, there's 15 games to choose from. What sticks out most to you?
Yeah, Luke, I'm actually going to go with Carmel versus Loyola on Wednesday night. And normally, if we didn't have that final score last week, I might not be saying that. But
If you
just
if you said that
purely,
2 weeks ago, I'd be like, "Are you serious?" But no, it absolutely makes for the storyline.
yeah,
I think you nail it
storyline.
for that one.
Yeah, it's just purely to see how Loyola responds and also how Carmel responds to how they played. I think that that's going to be a really interesting result. I'm looking forward to seeing who wins that game. Um, Yeah, I mean, maybe Carmel could do it again, and that would be, great for them if they could. But no matter who wins this game, I think the storylines will be there. That's my personal game of the week.
So now let's talk some question of the week. This one, a little bit biased. I happened to visit some of my friends and the hockey and football team down at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign this weekend. I went to the hockey game Friday night and I look around, there's hundreds, maybe 1,000 packed inside this little old brick rink called the UI Ice Arena right on campus. And it got me thinking, this energy, of course, it's getting there. I wouldn't say it's D1 yet, but it's right on the brink. A lot of energizing hockey, a lot of energizing people. And it got me thinking, even some of the SHL members, Chris Dubiel and Anthony Pasquale, slid up and they were like, yeah, no, they should make the jump to D1 because, Illinois doesn't have an NCAA D1 team. But perhaps outside of that, our question of the week is if there would be one team that you'd want to make the jump to NCAA, so any college to make the jump to NCAA D1, no matter how far or close, what are you thinking?
So for me, again, this might be a little bit biased, but I've done some work with the DePaul club team, and they are really good. And of course, that's ACHA good. So I'm not basing it off that, but they get a really good crowd atmosphere, and also just Illinois, one of the bigger, Chicago, one of the bigger hockey towns in the country. The entire state doesn't have an NCAA team, and that's just
Exactly. It's
it's
crazy.
crazy to me. And you have the Lake Forest Foresters, of course, which you mentioned, but that's D3. I would love to see a DePaul or a Northwestern or just any of these Chicago area schools. Loyola, why not? Uh, you know, with ties to the SHL, Loyola University. Get themselves a hockey program. I think it would do really well. I think there would be a lot of fans, and I think it'd just be great for the state and the city.
I'm with you on this one. I'm going with another team right near Chicago on the lakefront in Evanston. Of course, a little bias behind this one considering I currently work at Northwestern, but I just think if the Cats made a jump to D1, they got a rink, they got people to buy in. You're talking about just about 30 minutes north of Chicago where people are diehard Blackhawks fans. When the Blackhawks weren't at their best, we could have used another team here in Chicago to root for. Of course, not abandoning the Blackhawks themselves, but I think you gotta have a college, whether it's Illinois or whether it's Northwestern, you have to have a college in Illinois make a jump to the Big Ten hockey program. It's already such a great conference in its own. It's just missing a team from one of the more dominant states in hockey in America. And I really do think it goes without saying, but I like how we both picked teams from Illinois because they need to get one soon. If I die and there's still no Chicago or Illinois hockey teams at the NCAA D1 level, I'll be very disappointed. So
It'd be a crime. That's what it would be.
sure would be. Let's look at our trivia question. So this one, let's look at last week first, Dylan, if you'd like to repeat yours for the people.
Yeah, last week's trivia question was what was the highest scoring game in the SHL? And there were two. Either answer would have sufficed, but like I said, bonus points go out to anyone who got both of them. And you want me to give the answer too, Luke?
Go right ahead.
Well, it was Glenbrook South on both occasions with the win 10-2 over Carmel and 7-5 over the Lake Forest Scouts. So the correct answer was 12. And Luke, do you have our winner?
We do. It is the man, the myth, the legend, Danalokin 7716, who said in the YouTube comments, Glenbrook South beat Carmel 10-2, and Glenbrook South also beat Lake Forest 7-5. That's 12 total goals in 2 games right there. And we're already nearing that this season. The most high scoring game up to this point was New Trier beating Carmel 9-2. So we'll see if we break last year's record with this year's matchups, but for now, let's look at a game from last week for our trivia. Here is the question. Listen closely. It is fairly detailed. This is looking not outside of the SHL. This is SHL regular season. Prior to this week, where the Corsairs beat the Ramblers 6-1, when is the last time that Carmel beat Loyola in an SHL regular season game?
Hmm, that is a
It
good
has
question.
been a while, but don't overshoot it. It might not be as long ago as you think. So
Okay.
we'll see if anybody nails it. But that will do it for episode 7. And before we close it out, I just want to say Dylan and I are still seeking any sort of sponsorship you want. Of course, we've kind of gone a couple of episodes without mentioning it, but of course, we're still taking any sponsorship. We're doing this out of our own time, but of course, we would appreciate any help, and not only for us, but the brand of SHL themselves. This is just one of the big projects to getting the most dominant hockey conference in high school in the state more eyes on it. And just whatever, I mean, seriously, just feel free to contact the SHL network, any one of those emails. I believe Dylan's email is up there. You mentioned a couple of episodes ago. So feel
DM
free
the
to reach out to
Instagram as
Dylan.
well, or leave a
The
comment.
Instagram, he runs the
We've
Instagram.
mentioned, we've joked about it a couple times, but look at all this room up here and down here that you could have maybe a logo or a message or anything you want. That's we can work something out. Just let us know and we'll make it happen.
Absolutely a lot of free real estate, so take advantage of it. But for this episode, episode number 7, can't believe we've already made it there. What a week of hockey it's going to be. We hope you are going to enjoy it. For Dylan Ward, my name is Luke Jorden, signing off on episode 7. We'll see you next week.